The iron door slammed shut with a finality that echoed through Sera's bones. She threw herself against it, palms already bruising, screaming until her throat burned raw. Above her, through the narrow ventilation grate, she could hear the drums beginning, the sacred rhythm that called all unmated wolves to the ceremony grounds. "Please," her voice cracked, "someone help me." But the footsteps were already retreating. Her stepmother's satisfied laugh faded into silence, leaving only the distant throb of celebration and Sera's ragged breathing in the darkness. 3 hours earlier, Sera had been brushing out her dark hair in the small room she shared with the house servants, trying to calm the wild flutter in her chest. The mating ceremony came once every 5 years, when the full moon aligned with the autumn equinox. Every unmated wolf between 18 and 30 was required to attend. The moon goddess herself was said to weave the bonds during this sacred night, drawing true mates together with threads of destiny that couldn't be denied. Sera's wolf had been restless for weeks, packing beneath her skin, whining with an anticipation that felt almost painful. Something was coming, something that would change everything. "Still planning to embarrass us tonight?" Her stepsister Vivienne appeared in the doorway, resplendent in a gown of deep crimson that probably cost more than Sera earned in a year of serving the household. "Father would be ashamed to see what you've become." Sera's fingers tightened on the brush. Her father had been beta of the Silvercrest pack before a hunting accident took his life when she was 12. Within a year, her stepmother Margit had stripped her of her inheritance, reducing her to little more than a servant in her own home. The pack had turned a blind eye. One less beta family competing for influence suited many of them just fine. "My father would be proud that I survived your mother's cruelty," Sera said quietly, meeting Vivienne's gaze in the mirror. "That I didn't let you break me." Vivienne's perfect face twisted with rage. "You think you're going to find some mate tonight? That some wolf is going to see past your servant's clothes and recognize you as special." She laughed, cold and sharp. "You're delusional. Mother and I have already ensured that won't happen." Before Sera could respond, Margit swept into the room, her elegant features arranged in false concern. "Vivienne, darling, go ahead to the ceremony. I need a word with our dear Sera." Something in her stepmother's smile made ice crawl down Sera's spine. The moment Vivienne left, Margit's expression hardened. "I'm afraid you won't be attending tonight after all." "The ceremony is mandatory," Sera said, standing. "The Alpha King himself commanded." "The Alpha King won't notice one missing servant girl." Margit moved closer, and Sera caught the scent of wolfsbane mixed with her perfume. "You've been unwell. Everyone will understand." "I'm not unwell." Sera backed toward the door, but 2 of Margit's personal guards blocked her path. Panic spiked through her chest. "You can't do this." "I can do whatever I want." Margit's eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. "Did you really think I'd let you attend? Let you potentially form a bond that would give you status again? My daughter will be Luna of a powerful pack by sunrise, and you will remain exactly where you belong. In the dark. Forgotten." Sera tried to fight as they grabbed her arms, tried to scream, but someone pressed a cloth over her mouth, more wolfsbane enough to weaken her wolf, make her sluggish and compliant. The world tilted and blurred as they dragged her through the servants' corridors, down stone steps worn smooth by centuries of use, deep into the cellars beneath the packhouse. The old storage room smelled of earth and decay. They threw her inside, and she collapsed on the cold floor, the wolfsbane still singing through her veins, making everything feel distant and muffled. "By the time anyone thinks to look for you, the ceremony will be over," Margit said from the doorway. "And if you're very lucky, I might let you out before you starve." Then the door slammed shut, the bolt screamed home, and Sera was alone in the suffocating darkness. Now, with her hands bleeding and her voice nearly gone, Sera sank against the door and let the tears come. Above, the drums beat faster, building toward the moment when the ceremony would begin in earnest. She'd waited her whole life for this night. The one chance to find belonging, to discover if the moon goddess had woven a bond for her, if somewhere in the world existed a wolf who would see her as she truly was. And Margit had stolen it from her. Sera's wolf whimpered, pressing against her consciousness. Through the bond they shared, she could feel her wolf's anguish, a howl building in their chest that had nowhere to go. Then, like lightning striking through storm clouds, something shifted. The sensation started as a warmth in her chest, a gentle pulse that felt like a second heartbeat. Within seconds, it intensified, spreading through her ribs, down her arms, flooding her entire body with liquid heat. Sera gasped, pressing her hand over her heart. The bond. The mate bond was activating. "No," she whispered. "No, please not now." But the moon goddess didn't negotiate. The bond strengthened with each passing second, pulling at something deep inside her, an invisible tether connecting her to someone, somewhere above. Her wolf surged forward with desperate strength, throwing herself against the barriers of Sera's weakened body, trying to reach their mate. Sera could feel him, feel his confusion, his growing awareness, feel the exact moment he realized something was wrong. And God's help her, she could feel his power. This wasn't some pack warrior or even a beta's son. The strength radiating down the bond made her wolf drop to her belly in instinctive submission. This was an alpha, not just any alpha. This was the Alpha King himself. Kael Thorne stood at the center of the ceremony grounds, surrounded by hundreds of hopeful wolves, and tried to concentrate on the High Priestess's words. She was chanting in the old tongue, calling upon the moon goddess to reveal the bonds she'd woven, to guide her children to their destined mates. He'd attended 5 of these ceremonies already, each one ending the same way, him returning alone to his fortress, the massive castle that overlooked the territories of all 5 northern packs. As Alpha King, he ruled over the other alphas, maintained peace between the packs, enforced the old laws. He'd built his reputation on strength and cold justice. At 32, most assumed he'd never find a mate at all. He'd made peace with that truth years ago. Then the warmth started in his chest. Kael's breath caught. No, it couldn't be. But the heat was spreading, undeniable and fierce, a connection forming so fast it made his head spin. His wolf roared to life with a force that nearly drove him to his knees, every instinct screaming at him that she was here. His mate was here, finally, finally. But something was wrong. The bond was there, singing through him like electricity, but he couldn't sense her nearby. The tether pulled him away from the ceremony grounds, toward the pack house itself, and underneath the joy and recognition, he felt something else through the bond. Fear, pain, desperation. His mate was terrified. "Your Majesty," the High Priestess paused in her chanting, "is everything." Kael wasn't listening anymore. He was already moving, shoving through the crowd, following the bond that pulled at him like a rope tied around his ribs. His personal guards scrambled to follow, but he barely noticed them. Every second he wasn't moving toward her felt like glass grinding through his chest. The bond led him into the pack house, down corridors he barely registered. He passed startled servants and confused pack members, all of them bowing quickly as their king stalked past with eyes that had gone completely gold, his wolf too close to the surface to hide. Down, the bond was pulling him down. He found a door leading to the cellars and took the stairs 3 at a time. The bond was screaming now, his mate's distress feeding directly into his consciousness. Someone had hurt her. Someone had locked her away. The rage that built in his chest was primordial, the kind of fury that had once led to pack wars. The corridor at the bottom of the stairs was lined with storage rooms. Kael followed the bond to an old wooden door banded with iron, and he knew with absolute certainty, that she was on the other side. "Stand back," he growled at his guards, though he wasn't sure if they'd even followed him down. Kael didn't bother with the bolt. He called on his alpha strength, the power that made him king, and slammed his shoulder into the door. The wood exploded inward, the iron bands tearing free from their mountings with a shriek of metal. He stumbled into the dark room beyond, and the bond pulled so tight it took his breath away. She was there. Curled against the far wall, hands bloody, face streaked with tears, a young woman stared at him with eyes the color of storm clouds. Her dark hair was tangled, her simple dress torn, and she looked like she'd been fighting for her life against that door. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Mate, his wolf said through his lips, the word coming out in a voice that was barely human. Sera couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The Alpha King stood in the doorway of her prison, backlit by torchlight, his massive frame filling the space. He had to be nearly 6.5 feet tall, all muscle and controlled power, with dark hair that fell across intense hazel eyes that were currently glowing gold with his wolf's presence. And he was looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "You're hurt," he said, his voice rough as he stepped forward. The fury radiating from him made the air shimmer, but when he reached for her, his hands were infinitely gentle. "Who did this to you?" Sera tried to find words, but the bond between them was overwhelming now that they were close, a living thing that demanded acknowledgement. Her wolf was crying, howling with joy and relief, begging her to reach for him, to touch him, to confirm that this wasn't some cruel dream. Her voice failed. "They locked me in. I couldn't get out. The ceremony is meaningless without you." He was kneeling in front of her now, carefully taking her bleeding hands in his. His touch sent sparks racing up her arms. "I'm Kael, and I'm going to ask you one question. Did someone deliberately keep you from the ceremony tonight?" The gentleness in his voice made her want to cry all over again. But there was something else underneath it, something that promised violence to whoever had done this. "My stepmother," she whispered. "She wanted her daughter to have a chance at a powerful match. I'm nobody, just a servant. My father, he was beta once, but he died, and she took everything." Kael's eyes flashed pure gold. "Your name?" Sera Blackwood." "Sera," he said it like a prayer. "You are not nobody. You are my mate. You are my queen. And anyone who laid a hand on you tonight is going to learn what it means to anger the moon goddess herself." He stood, effortlessly lifting her with him, cradling her against his chest like she weighed nothing. Sera's exhausted body sagged against him, her wolf purring for the first time in hours. She could feel his heartbeat, strong and steady, matching the rhythm of her own. "Hold on to me," Kael said softly. "We're going to go back to the ceremony, and we're going to make some things very clear." As he carried her up the stairs, Sera heard voices. Many voices. It seemed half the pack had followed their king when he'd stormed away from the ceremony. "Kael, what's going?" An older alpha, probably one of the pack leaders, stopped mid-sentence as Kael emerged into the torchlight carrying Sera. Is that the Blackwood girl?" "This is Sera Blackwood," Kael said, his voice carrying the unmistakable weight of command. "My mate, the woman the moon goddess chose for me, the woman who was locked in a cellar during the sacred ceremony by members of this pack." The assembled wolves erupted in shocked whispers. "Where is Margaret Blackwood?" Kael's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Where is her daughter Vivienne?" "Here, your majesty." Margaret pushed through the crowd, Vivienne at her side. Both of them froze when they saw Sera in the Alpha King's arms, the color draining from their faces. There must be some mistake. Sera wasn't feeling well tonight. She chose not to attend. "She was locked in the cellar." Kael's words fell like stones. "I broke down the door myself and found her with bloody hands from trying to escape. So I'm going to give you one chance to tell me the truth, Margaret. Did you imprison my mate to prevent her from attending the ceremony?" Margaret's mouth opened and closed. Around them, the crowd had gone deathly silent. She's just a servant girl. I didn't know. How could I have known?" "You knew the ceremony was mandatory." An elderly woman stepped forward, the high priestess herself, her weathered face stern. "You knew that interfering with the moon goddess's work during the sacred night is among our gravest sins." "She's lying anyway," Vivienne burst out, her beautiful face twisted with jealousy. "There's no way that little mouse is meant for you, your majesty. Look at her. She's nothing." Kael's arms tightened around Sera, and when he spoke, his voice held the kind of authority that made every wolf in hearing distance drop their gaze in submission. "What I see is my mate. What I see is the woman chosen for me by the moon goddess herself. What I see is the future queen of all 5 packs." He turned his gold eyes on Vivienne. "What you see is irrelevant." "The bond is clear," the high priestess said, moving closer to peer at them both. Even from here, I can see the connection between them, blessed by the goddess herself. What was done here tonight is an abomination. Margaret dropped to her knees. Please, Your Majesty, I didn't understand. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Kael's voice was ice. You chose to imprison an innocent woman, to deny her the right to attend the sacred ceremony, to interfere with destiny itself for your own gain. He looked at the high priestess. What is the traditional punishment for such crimes? Exile, the old woman said quietly. Permanent banishment from Pack lands. Sera felt Margaret's terror spike through the bond, not her own bond, but the Pack bonds that connected all wolves in the territory. Exile was a death sentence for most wolves. Without a pack, without protection, without the shared strength that came from belonging, a wolf rarely survived more than a few years. No, Sera heard herself say. Everyone turned to look at her, and she realized she'd actually spoken out loud. Please, I don't want, she's still Vivienne's mother. Kael looked down at her, something complicated moving through his expression. She tried to steal your destiny. She locked you in the dark and left you to suffer. You owe her nothing, Sera. I know. Sera met his eyes, seeing the wolf lurking just beneath the surface, wanting blood for what had been done to his mate. But I don't want to start us, with vengeance. I've lived with hate for so long. I don't want to carry it forward. She could feel Kael's internal struggle through the bond, his wolf's rage at war with something else, something softer. Finally, he looked back at Margaret and Vivienne. You're fortunate my mate has a kinder heart than you deserve, he said. But mercy doesn't mean no consequences. Margaret Blackwood, you are stripped of all titles and properties that came from your marriage to Beta Blackwood. Those will be returned to Sera, their rightful owner. You and your daughter are barred from holding any Pack position of authority, and you will both spend the next 5 years in service to the Pack's orphanage, caring for the children who have no one else. Perhaps you'll learn something about real worth. It was a calculated punishment, Sera realized, one that stripped them of power and pride but gave them a chance at redemption. Around them, the assembled wolves murmured approval. Justice had been served, but without the finality of exile. Kael looked at the high priestess. Is this acceptable? The old woman studied them both, then smiled, a small, knowing expression that made her seem ancient and ageless at once. The moon goddess is pleased. The bond between you is strong, Alpha King. Treat her well. I intend to, Kael said softly, looking down at Sera. Now, if you'll all excuse us, my mate needs medical attention. We'll address everything else tomorrow. He carried her through the crowd, which parted like water before them. Sera caught glimpses of faces, some shocked, some pleased, some envious, but she couldn't focus on any of them. The wolfsbane was wearing off, but exhaustion and the overwhelming intensity of the mate bond had left her drained. Where are we going? She asked as they moved away from the pack house. My home, Kael said. The fortress, you'll be safe there. That's hours away. I have a car waiting. He glanced down at her. Unless you'd prefer to stay here tonight, I can arrange. No, the word came out more forcefully than she'd intended. I don't. I can't stay here. She felt his understanding through the bond, warm and steady. Then we'll go. My pack doctor is there. She'll take care of your hands. They emerged into the night air, where a sleek black car was indeed waiting. Kael's guards materialized from the shadows, but he waved them toward a second vehicle. He wanted her alone, Sera realized. Wanted time for them to talk without the weight of the pack, the ceremony, the politics. He settled her gently in the back seat and climbed in beside her. The driver pulled away without a word, and then they were gliding through the darkness, leaving Silvercrest Pack behind. I'm sorry, Kael said after a long moment of silence. For what was done to you, I should have sensed something was wrong sooner. How could you have known? Sera looked at her bandaged hands. One of the guards had wrapped them quickly before they left. I didn't even know we were mates until the bond activated. I've been looking for you for 15 years, he said quietly. Since the first ceremony after I came of age, I'd started to believe the goddess had no mate for me. Sera studied his profile in the dim light. The strong jaw, the slight crook in his nose that suggested it had been broken at least once, the way his hands rested on his knees, relaxed but ready. He looked like what he was, a warrior, a king, someone who had clawed his way to the top and held his position through strength. "I'm not what you expected," she said. "Am I?" He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "You're exactly what I needed. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, Sera. Whatever you think you lack, whatever they told you weren't, forget it. You were made for this, made for me. I don't know how to be a queen. I didn't know how to be a king when I first took the crown." He reached over, carefully taking her bandaged hand in his. "We'll figure it out together, if you want this. The bond doesn't force you to accept me. You have a choice." Sera felt her wolf rise up, indignant at the very suggestion of rejecting their mate. But Kael was right. The bond could be refused. It would be agonizing, might take years to fully break, but it was possible. He was giving her an out. "Do you want me to have a choice?" she asked. "Truly." Something vulnerable flashed across his face. "I want you to choose me because you want to, not because destiny demands it. I want you to know me and still decide I'm worth keeping." The honesty in his words made her chest ache. Here was the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories, and he was afraid she might not want him. "I choose you," Sera said softly. "I don't need time to think about it. I've spent my whole life waiting to belong somewhere to someone. The moon goddess gave me you. I'm not foolish enough to refuse that gift." Kael's relief flooded through the bond so strongly it made her gasp. Then he was leaning closer, his hand coming up to cup her face with a gentleness that seemed impossible from someone so powerful. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Sera's answer was to close the distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them learning the shape of this new thing between them. But the bond sang with approval, pulling them closer, and the gentleness gave way to something deeper. Kael's hand slid into her hair, and Sera found herself gripping his shirt, anchoring herself to him as the world spun away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael rested his forehead against hers. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel trapped or forgotten again," he promised. "You're going to be so thoroughly loved and protected that tonight will seem like a bad dream." Sera believed him. She could feel the truth of his words through the bond, the fierce devotion already building in his heart. This man, this alpha king, was hers, and she was his. The fortress rose out of the mountains like something from an old story, all stone towers and ancient walls. As they drove through the gates, Sera saw guards snapping to attention, saw the lights blazing in welcome. This was her home now. This impossible, beautiful place with this impossible, beautiful man. "It's overwhelming," Kael said, watching her reaction. "But you don't have to learn everything at once. We'll take it slow." "Will we?" Sera raised an eyebrow, feeling a spark of mischief despite her exhaustion. "You literally broke down a door to get to me tonight." He laughed, the sound startling them both. "Fair point. I may not be good at slow, but I'll try for you." The car stopped in front of the main entrance, where a small woman with silver-streaked hair was already waiting. "That'll be Dr. Chen," Kael said. "Best pack doctor in the territories. She's going to fuss over you." He was right. Dr. Chen took one look at Sera's hands and ushered them both inside, muttering about foolish wolves and proper wound care. She led them to a medical wing that was far nicer than any hospital Sera had seen, and set about carefully cleaning and rebandaging her injuries while Kael hovered nearby, his worry palpable through the bond. "The cuts aren't deep," Dr. Chen said finally. "They'll heal within a few days with your wolf's natural regeneration, but you need rest and food. When did you last eat?" Sera tried to remember. "This morning, maybe." Kael made a low growling sound. "I'm going to go back there and—" "You're not going anywhere," Dr. Chen said firmly, pointing at him. "You're going to sit down and let me check your mate for any other injuries. Then you're both going to eat a proper meal and sleep. The rest of the world can wait until tomorrow." To Sera's amazement, the Alpha King sat down without argument. When the doctor left to arrange for food, he caught Sera's amused expression. Dr. Chen delivered me when I was born, he explained. She's one of the few people who can still order me around. I like her. Good, you'll be seeing a lot of her. He paused. Sera, I know this is all happening fast, too fast. You don't have to decide anything tonight about us, about the future. We can. Kael, Sera waited until he met her eyes. Stop trying to give me exits. I'm not looking for one. Yes, this is overwhelming. Yes, I'm terrified. But I'm also more certain of this than I've been of anything in my life. You're my mate. I'm yours. Everything else we'll figure out together. The smile that spread across his face was radiant, transforming him from intimidating king to something younger, more hopeful. Together, he agreed. They ate in a private dining room, and despite everything, Sera found herself laughing at Kael's stories about the politics between the packs, the ridiculous disputes he had to mediate. He asked about her life too, and she found herself opening up about her childhood, her father, even the hard years after his death. You survived, Kael said when she finished. That takes incredible strength, and now you're going to thrive. He showed her to a suite of rooms that would be hers, at least until they completed the mating bond fully, which would happen when they were both ready, no rush. The rooms were beautiful, all soft colors and comfortable furniture, with windows that overlooked the mountains. My chambers are just through that door, Kael said, gesturing to a connecting door. If you need anything at all, or if you just want company. Sera knew she should let him leave, should take time to process everything. But the thought of being alone after everything that had happened made her chest tighten. Stay, she said, please, just for a while. Relief flooded through the bond. Of course. They ended up on the couch by the fireplace, Sera curled against Kael's side, his arm around her shoulders. They talked about small things, favorite foods, childhood memories, the strange quirks of their wolves. Outside the windows, the moon rose higher, blessing them with her light. I felt you, you know, Sera said drowsily, her exhaustion finally catching up with her. When the bond activated, I was so scared, but then I felt your strength and I knew you'd come. Always, Kael promised, pressing a kiss to her hair. No matter what, Sera, I'll always come for you. She fell asleep there, safe in her mate's arms, the bond humming contentedly between them. Above the fortress, the full moon shone down, the moon goddess watching over the two souls she'd finally brought together. Tomorrow would bring challenges, integrating Sera into pack politics, dealing with those who would question a servant girl as queen, navigating the complex world of alpha hierarchy. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, a woman who had been locked in darkness found light. Tonight, a king who had been alone found his match. Tonight, destiny proved that it couldn't be stolen or denied, only delayed until the perfect moment. And as Sera dreamed of mountains and moonlight and the strong heartbeat beneath her ear, she knew that every moment of suffering had led her here. To him, to home. The moon goddess had woven her thread true after all.
If you like this story, take a moment to subscribe, like and comment where you are watching from.